Happy August 18th, Sunday. To you, there's a lot of baseball games. In this video, I'm going to talk about the baseball games today and also talk about a fantasy application for classic Major League Baseball classic mode where you pick a bunch of players in different positions for baseball and craft lineups. Somebody www.w3, I think that's how many W's there are in his name, requested a matchup on DraftKings with me today. So we did it, and I'm going to talk about how you craft a lineup and craft lineups in this file today because it's a really cool application. If you're interested in using this DraftKings lineup simulator, it's a very huge file. You'll see as we start to mess around with it. And it's something you need to contact me if you want to be using this because it changes all the time and I'm doing work. And it's very powerful. So contact me on the website, ken@kenbraverman.com, if you want information. So today, Boston's already down 3-0 to Baltimore early. Good time to bet them live betting because Baltimore's bullpen is terrible. As you can see here, Baltimore's bullpen. Where are you, Baltimore? Down here. Baltimore, they got this Ty Black who's not going to hold up with the 14 ERA, and then their bullpen ERA is 5.9, almost 6. So you can expect Boston to put some runs back up and come back in that game. Good time to live bet them. As for the baseball picks, Tampa Bay, of course, over Detroit, they're also losing 2-0, I think, in the first. So that's also not a bad idea, although Tampa Bay's been a little lighter in terms of strength the last week or so. Minnesota's still strong. Hopefully they'll beat Texas. They got the Mets over Kansas City, Cubs, Colorado. I hate taking the Phillies. They've blown it twice against San Diego. And or no, they won one, lost one, I think, against San Diego. Then Washington, tough late game last night, like 15-14 and a bunch of extra innings. So let's say that you were crafting a fantasy lineup here for today. So I got challenged, right? And in this fantasy application, this is a huge file where it's going to generate all these enormous lineups in here as soon as we press refresh and really go into this. But we have to pick a roster first. We have to pick at least a group of guys that we want to mess with. And I've grabbed 3 pitchers already. But let's talk about like picking catchers. Sorry, that was tough to say. And how that works, right? So let's go to our MLB file here. Here we have the entire lineups. Most of the lineups are updated for the day, especially the games that we're looking at. And I was looking at DraftKings position catchers. So this slicer over here is the DraftKings assigned position for the player. So catcher first base, catcher second base, all have a catcher in them and are all going to be eligible to play. So here are your catchers on your different teams. And what order they're in. Now, why don't we look instead of by team, let's look by player and then open it up by team. So now you have all of the catchers by player, and this is a score that I have in the file calculating their contribution. So it's not a DraftKings fantasy points calculation, but it is a contribution which has a lot of different factors in it, like hitting and stealing bases and everything that contributes to DraftKings points is in there, but it's a different way of calculating it. And I believe it's more helpful in predicting offense in games. So here you have people that you would choose from. Well, if you could say, if you weren't caring about matchups and teams, you just wanted to quickly grab a few catchers, because in this file, it's going to allow you here in the simulator to take up to 3 catchers and start messing them around in lineups. Well, Real Muto is good. Gary Sanchez, although the Yankees have a tougher pitching matchup. Maybe you grab like Wilson Ramos, Travis d'Arnaud right against Detroit. Grab these 3 guys if you like them. You can always mess around with game flow and change the way that you set up your lineups here based on game flow that you want to predict. And that's the way you're really going to win a ton of money in fantasy sports, is by entering multiple lineups, predicting game flow, and entering them into big tournaments. So you got some catchers there. Well, how about first baseman? Well, here's our first base people. First base, outfield. There's a catcher, first base also. That person will also be eligible. So here are your list of your first basemen. You can see there's some really big numbers here. Also somebody on Cleveland going up against the Yankees, right? Pete Alonso going up against Kansas City. And Trey Mancini on Baltimore. That's surprising. He's probably not as heavily owned. So let's grab those 3 guys. Put them in first base. Then let's grab some second basemen. Now keep in mind, we're grabbing probably pretty expensive, pretty powerful guys. And what the application is going to do, which is so great about it and helps you reduce the time it takes you to generate lineups is, let's see, second baseman. Is it you're going to be able to grab two guys on the Yankees? See, look at this. You can get two guys on the Yankees that might be classified as possible second baseman. Keep that in mind. There are two guys that fill that spot. Whit Merrifield will be going up against the Mets. Villar, Stakis, Gleyber Torres. Let's go Ozzy Albies, baby. Let's grab those guys. Put them in as our second baseman. So these guys, they're pretty powerful guys. So the application is going to be able to figure out how to assemble them in a roster that is underneath the salary cap. That's what makes it so powerful, because you can do that right as, when the lineups are announced an hour before the game. You can end up doing that right as they're announced, and then having it automatically generate all your lineups, and then you upload them, and then you're good to go. See, LeMahieu's on both. Let's go with Donaldson there. So we're grabbing some third baseman. Let's look at the shortstops. And these are all really the 1 o'clock games that are in this DraftKings potential tournament here. Let's look at shortstops. Shortstop. The other way you can do is go up into the filter up here in DraftKings position and just type SS, and only the shortstops will show up. You can do that too, like this, and see that only the shortstop ones will be here. And I love Freddie Galvis. Since he got traded, he's been super strong. Let's grab Lindor if we can. Grabbing these three here, shortstops, and then we need how many outfielders? I think 6 or 9. How many did I think I allotted 9, actually. Yep, 9 outfielders. So we go look at the outfielders here. I'm going to take this filter off if I can. Take that filter off, and then we're going to look for third baseman. I'm sorry, outfielders. Outfielder. I think those are all our outfielders. So we have Yelich, Puig. Let's just grab the top 9, see if it'll let us. So we're grabbing the top 9 point scoring outfielders and dumping them here. So now that we've filled out a lot of potential guys here, and they're all really high salary guys, how are we going to get these guys that are averaging $5,000 or more into a lineup of 10 people under $50,000? How are we going to do that with these pitchers that are also expensive? Let's see if it's possible. Here's the breakdown of the huge thing. As soon as I press refresh on this, I hope the whole computer doesn't freeze, because it might. It's a really powerful file. We're going to refresh, and we're going to see how many lineups show up, if it's possible. And the answer is, I think, no. All values are filtered out. I don't think it's possible. Let's take a look. Yeah, every salary level seems to be over 50,000. So you know that isn't possible. So now, once you realize that you can't do that, and I guess, I don't know why Trey Mancini's in here twice. Let's get rid of that. Nice that it tells us that somebody's in here twice. So now, well, all right, so we can't use all these guys that we have. We were unable to do it with the salaries in different areas. So we're going to have to reduce people, right? Or bring in people that have lower salaries. Now, what I'm going to do in order, just for time purposes, because you see how long it takes to really craft a game flow lineup that fits under the salary cap, is I'm going to grab a bunch of cheap outfielders real quick, just so that this will work. So here's our outfielders. Let's go down to the bottom of the list. These people are all playing, by the way, assuming our roster lineup is correct, which it probably is, because all these lineups were confirmed. So these guys should be all playing, but they're not big scorers. And their salaries are going to be lower, because they're lower at the bottom of the list. And let's see what happens. Yep, they are a lot lower. So now let's try to refresh and see if any of these lineups are possible. And let's unfilter that, because I think that's a weird thing. There we go. There actually might have been lineups possible in the other combination, because I had something filtered there. But these ones are all under. I want you to go back and try that again. Here's what we're going to do. Remember I said grab the top 9 instead? Let's see if it's possible. because I had something filtered out. That was an accident. Let's go back here. You can see why, with all the different ways to get this wrong, how getting a full, complete game flow lineup into entered into the big tournaments is so powerful and gives you a chance at really winning the whole thing. Because if you hit the iteration that ends up coming out and you do it, yeah, there was one lineup. Are you serious? That's funny. There's only one lineup that ends up having a salary of 50,000 exactly, and that's these guys right here. That's funny. Eovaldi, Sabathia, Arno, Freeman, Moustakas, Donaldson, Freddie Galvis, Yasiel Puig, Jorge Soler, and Whit Merrifield. That's the only lineup that fits with these guys. So all those calculations just showed you that with these huge guys here, this is really the lineup I probably should have entered against WWWWWWWWW3, the player on DraftKings that I challenged, because it barely fits in the salary cap, and it's a pretty awesome lineup, apparently, because this lineup would score on average 85.46 points, which is a pretty good just default amount that if you summed up the average points of all these guys, that's what it would bring. So I know it's a long video, but if you're interested in this DraftKings simulator file, you can see how powerful it is. Talk to me and we'll discuss, because this one that works with the classic method on DraftKings is the only one that of the ones that I've built so far that I have built independently and can sell independently. This has totally been my development. So if you're interested in using this or purchasing this from me, or using it to really crush tournaments, because keep in mind, this is just classic. There's NFL coming up, and NFL is where you can win 2, 3, more some millions of dollars off a $20 entry. So if you're going to pack up a tournament like that, you're going to need an application like this where you're predicting different game flow up here in the roster and really just setting this up for different games and then getting all the possible combinations of what can happen, or reasonable amounts of possible combinations, and saving them and then doing it for different games and then stacking them into one big tournament where you can have 150 entries. And that's how you end up getting a chance at really winning the whole thing. It's very difficult to do it on your own because there are going to be unpredictable elements that occur, and you kind of just have to smear all the possible combinations around what you want and try to predict game flow. So that's the secret to fantasy. We'll be getting more into that as the season goes, but contact me if you're interested, and hopefully all of our picks will be winning today.